The following podcast is a presentation of This Is Infamous. Listener discretion is advised.
What's going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to another brand new episode of Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. That's right, the IWC podcast back again this week with another loaded show. But come on, aren't they all like that? Aren't they all pretty major shows we deliver week in and week out? As always, I'm your host, Billy Donnelly. Lots to talk about this week, okay? When we look at the WWE end of the spectrum, I'm going to be talking about WWE Backlash. Going to also be talking about NXT TakeOver Chicago. My guest, USA Today's Brian Truitt, will be on in just a couple of minutes to talk about those two shows at length. Later in the broadcast, of course, our resident guru, Tom Nix, will be here to go over some homework. Got to talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling and the Battle of the Super Juniors. Lots of Will Ospreay to talk about on this show, so stick around for later in the podcast. We'll get into that. But before I welcome Brian on, there was one thing of note I did want to discuss just at the beginning of the show. Announcement that Triple H made and ultimately confirmed that there were some rumblings and rumors of basically an all-women's tournament, sort of along the lines of what we got with the Cruiserweight Classic as well as the UK Championship that took place on the WWE Network. There had been rumblings of an all-women's tournament that could be coming, and that was confirmed earlier this week. It is called the Mae Young Classic. We will be getting 32 female wrestling talents in filling out the brackets. It will take place over a number of weeks, starting in July, early to mid-July, at Full Sail Live down in Orlando. So hopefully I'll be there attending that as the summer wears on to sort of give you a live perspective of how everything was laid out and the talents that are there. And look, we'll keep an eye on sort of the announcements as they come. This was just sort of the tip of the iceberg as far as the Mae Young Classic, which is a surprising name, but ultimately pretty fitting when you think of the legacy of Mae Young and how she's treated with such respect in the legacy and history of the WWE. So, it'll be interesting to see who is brought into the fold to compete in this tournament. I don't think it's just going to be U.S. talents or well-known sort of indie names. I think there will be some names there. Maybe people like Candice LeRae. I know Big Tom Nix will be sort of hedging his bets and hoping, praying for Delilah Doom to be brought into the mix. So I think this is going to be a real showcase for a lot of female talent that people are not aware of. This will sort of put them on the map, as well as some international talents. So don't look for 32 indie darlings to fill out the brackets, but look for a lot of people who you may not have heard of as well to sort of see how this comes together. The Cruiserweight Classic was a little bit tough. They tried to get 32 names, and when you went into the first round, not all 32 were quality cruiserweights. So it'll be interesting to see if they can find 32 real solid female talents, either from pulling from Shimmer, pulling from some of the Orlando and Florida indies, people like Lacey Lane perhaps. There will be a number of talents for them to be able to fill out, and I think there's more women out there, solid women out there, than people give credit for with sort of women's wrestling only really gaining momentum the last couple of years. So I think there's a lot of people sort of not getting the credit that they deserve. So I think this is going to be a platform for them to show what they can do, for them to make a name for themselves, and ultimately for an influx of talent, perhaps, into the women's divisions of both NXT as well as the WWE. So that's something for us to keep an eye on. It's a real exciting piece of news. Huge fan of women's wrestling, and I think this is going to be one of those things that, once again, helps change the long-term perspective of what women's wrestling is. It's no longer just bra and panties matches. It's no longer just hot females stepping in the ring as eye candy. Oh no, it's a legitimate athletic display of the female gender in the ring inside that squared circle. So something to get excited about there. With that said, let's get into some in-ring action. And now, joining me on the This Is Infamous hotline, you can find all his work at USA Today. You can also listen to him on the Mothership podcast, and be sure to follow him on Twitter at Brian Truitt. USA Today's Brian Truitt is here to talk tons of wrestling with me this week, mostly WWE, as we're going to talk, well, I guess WWE and NXT, as we're going to talk in depth about NXT TakeOver Chicago and WWE Backlash. So, Brian, it's been a while since we've caught up and chatted. How you been, dude?
It's been good. How about yourself, man?
As we've sort of brought the podcast back, I find that the non-WWE portion of my life has been more fulfilling.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, any day where you don't have like Braun Strowman like throwing an ambulance at you is a good day.
See, I find those days to be pretty good, though. I those are the days that actually get me excited. I'm like, he flipped an ambulance?
Well, that's cool. Not on you, though.
Well, I mean, it's added benefit that it was Roman Reigns, is it not?
That's true. Yeah, it's him and not you. That's all that matters.
Yeah, so that actually is a good day for me. Then I'm like, oh, Braun Strowman tried to commit attempted murder on Roman Reigns. All right, and then then we have Houses of Horrors. So look, this has been a jam-packed weekend of wrestling that we just moved past. As I said, NXT TakeOver Chicago and WWE Backlash, which we're going to talk about. You also had the WWE UK special that was available on the WWE Network. Lots of good wrestling there for you to dive into if you wanted. You had two Evolve shows, Evolve 84 and Evolve 85 out there. So lots of wrestling. Almost too much for a one weekend. Almost too much. And as usual, the WWE tried to just oversaturate the market with all in-ring action. But there was some really good stuff, and we're going to get into it right now as a part of all of their shows. So, look, what the WWE now likes to do, especially for some of their, I guess you would normally say bigger pay-per-views, but I don't know that we would consider Backlash sort of one of their bigger pay-per-views. But I think because of the fact that it took place in Chicago, they went ahead and made the decision to pair up NXT TakeOver with Backlash and sort of just commandeer the Allstate Arena in Chicago for the entire weekend. Now, we've seen this with WrestleMania. We've seen this with the Royal Rumble. Like, this is now their MO to sort of pair up these shows and bring in just a lot of wrestling fans. Like, why have them spend their dollar elsewhere? We'll have them spend it on our own product. So, before we, I guess, get into the matches in depth, overall heading into the weekend, what was sort of your feeling and your expectations for, I guess, both TakeOver and Backlash?
I mean, TakeOver, I was expecting the Asuka Ruby Riott Nikki Cross match to be good. I think that's the one thing that in NXT, in its heyday and in where it is kind of now, it's all the women wrestlers have always been very, very, very good. And that's why and Asuka is one of my favorites, just whether male or female. So I was looking forward to that, and I really like Bobby Roode. I really like what they're doing with Bobby Roode, and he had, I don't think, other than some of the Shinsuke matches he's had, I don't think he really has seen what he can really do wrestling wise quite yet. So I was excited about the God, I'm gonna kill his name. The Hideo Itami match with Roode plus the women's match.
Yeah, for TakeOver, I've been to several TakeOvers before, even in Full Sail. I've seen shows there. I sort of have been with NXT for quite some time, and there's a changing of the guard, sort of, a new era of NXT, which they themselves are quite aware of. And look, the feel of a TakeOver is is always, it always feels like you're going to watch something really cool. Even if the matches don't excite you, there's just a vibe in the air when it's takeover night, that you're going to get something really cool. And even if you go to the Orlando show over WrestleMania weekend, where really not a lot of significance happened. You had some really good wrestling, but there were no title changes. It was sort of, once again, a changing of the guard. People like the Revival were leaving. Shinsuke Nakamura was leaving. Ty Dillinger was leaving. And then you had these new talents really sort of coming into their own on that show. Heading into this takeover, I was curious how they would transition from that to moving forward with this new direction. But I think when it comes to a takeover, you always feel like there's going to be something cool as part of the show. Like, you're never disappointed. You're never like, oh, takeover's on tonight, whatever. Or you never like forget it. You're like, oh, I forgot takeover's tonight. You always know. So in that way, like, NXT has done a really great job of making these shows always feel important. As far as Backlash is concerned, what were your feelings going into Backlash on Sunday? Were you excited for that show?
Yeah, I mean, I was interested in that because there was a couple of things I was interested in. I was interested in how good the Kevin Owens AJ Styles match would be, because I know it. Those two guys in the ring are going to be good. I mean, it's just a matter of how great is that match going to be, and how, and you don't know if they're really going to keep them for a program for any length of time, or is it just kind of like, is this AJ's kind of like quick stop before going to challenge for the main championship. And I was also interested in that Randy Orton Jinder Mahal match. Because there's so much kind of been made about Jinder's push, and are they going to keep strap on Randy for any amount of time, which he never really does. I can't remember how many times he's won it, but that also means he's lost it a lot of times too. They never really keep it on him for very long. So I was interested in those two matches to kind of see what would shake out in terms of who wins, who loses, and kind of where they're going to go afterward.
Yeah, see, I was also excited about Backlash, and this is coming from somebody who's sort of like on a reduced diet of WWE programming right now. I cannot even tell you the last time I fully remember watching a whole episode of Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, for that matter. Like, I watch bits and pieces, I watch things as they go, but I just cannot, for my own mental health and sanity, sit down and watch 5 hours of those two shows to occupy and fill up my Monday and Tuesday. I just can't do it. I cannot bring myself. Raw especially. Like, Raw is just, that's the backbreaker. Like, that's the one that just wears you down on Monday. And if you sit through all 3 of those hours, like, you don't even want to see wrestling ropes for the rest of the week. So, but looking at Backlash, even sort of keeping tabs and following along with what's been happening, but not necessarily watching it in its entirety, I thought from top to bottom, the matches were at least exciting on paper. And this is sort of one of the first times I can remember in a while, other than, a Royal Rumble or WrestleMania, where I looked at a WWE card and was interested, like really interested as to what these matches may become, whether it was Nakamura and Ziggler, or Mahal and Orton, or Styles and Owens, or how much I love Breezango. There was a lot of stuff on there that had me interested. So yeah, I think heading into the 2 shows this weekend, there was a lot of excitement, at least on my part, as to what type of what might transpire over the course of those 2 evenings. So I think the proper place to start would be with NXT TakeOver Chicago. We'll get into all the main roster stuff with Backlash in just a little bit, but I want to start down at NXT TakeOver Chicago because, as I said, I have never found with a TakeOver show that I did not get my money's worth. Whether I was there, whether I was watching it on TV, I always felt like I was getting my money's worth from it. And on this particular night, I think that wound up being the same. So, I mean, at least for me, what were your overall impressions of the TakeOver show?
It's all wrestling's good. Wrestling-wise, good show. I just think, like you mentioned, it is in a transition period right now where it isn't kind of you have some people who are kind of like are just kind of getting ready for the main roster spot, like your Bobby Roode and a few others, Asuka, and then you have the really developmental guys. And so and there's nothing in between, and I feel like that's kind of the until they figure that out. I think NXT is going to be kind of in a weird place, because when you had Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens and such, they had been there for a while. They were developmental talents, kind of that got over with that crowd very organically. Whereas ever since they kind of started, taking in TNA guys like Eric Young and Bobby Roode and Samoa Joe before them, it seemed kind of like it wasn't really developmental. It was just like, okay, it's like this is like AA ball where you're gonna be here for a while until we can get you into the majors. So I feel like they need to figure that out. In terms of personalities, in terms of like storylines and stuff, the wrestling's all great. I mean, that's the one thing about NXT is if you want wrestling, that's the place to go, because they can they get guys and girls who can both do that. But it's just like the storylines just kind of aren't there, and the characters just aren't there.
Yeah, I mean,
to really sell everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you to that point in that they got sort of sidetracked from what NXT was meant to be. I mean, it still is developmental. It's still a feeder system as they head up. But when you have sort of guys coming in who spend a lot of time there, who may be better suited for the main roster, I guess just to sort of acclimate them, people like Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, Shinsuke Nakamura, people who could have come in and gone right to the main roster. It sort of, I think, sidetracked what the NXT mission was, which was to develop guys like Bo Dallas and Tyler Breeze and Neville, who'd worked before the WWE anyway, but was still sort of finding his footing as far as who he was and putting it all together, and sort of have them sort of not pushed aside, but to take sort of a back seat to Samoa Joe and Drew Galloway now, or Drew McIntyre, people who are a little bit more known. I would agree with you on that point. And as a result, you're still trying to figure out like who these personalities are, what it is that they're about. Like Ruby Riott just sort of showed up on the scene. She has a cool look to her, and she has a really good moveset. But like, what is it about her other than that we're supposed to sort of gravitate towards? Nikki Cross is with Sanity, but I still don't feel like they've put all the pieces together as far as like what it is that Sanity truly wants, and how it is that they're going to get it. So yeah, I mean, I would agree with you on those points, which is like, as far as the action and the matches and really getting you excited for what you're seeing, telling a story within those matches. You're always going to get a good show from NXT. But if you're looking for that extra depth, they're still trying to find that footing again, as they moved a lot of people up, and now they're moving a lot of people in to sort of figure out where their futures are.
I mean, I think Sanity is probably the best thing they have going, because it's the only thing where it's just like, even though like you mentioned, you have a good point where they're still trying to figure out what Sanity's deal is and what they need to do. Are they just kind of like crazy anarchists that are just going to beat down everybody, NWO style, but with masks or something? But at least they have something where you're like, oh, well, those are the bad guys. They're going to go beat some people down. The rest of that roster is just like, they're out for their own. There's no, it's just like there's no real team. There's, other than a few tag teams, everybody's kind of out on their own, doing their own thing. Like Bobby Roode, I love him to death, but it's just like, he's kind of doing a heel thing, but he's being cheered, and so he's kind of a weird tweener on his own, and so Sanity's the only kind of thing where you're like, okay, well, these guys, these people are together. They're building their personalities off of that. I don't know if they're just going to move them up to main roster or something. I don't know, but at least they've got like a coherent, like, okay, they're together. They kind of all have a cool look, and Nikki Cross is kind of nuts. So that's why, kind of when she goes off to wrestle Asuka and Ruby Riott, then we kind of, even though we don't have that much of a feeling about her character, we know she's nuts. That's kind of her deal. And then when Eric Young goes to and wrestles Roderick Strong, again, we have some context to where he comes from. But the rest of them, it's just kind of like they're just kind of out there doing their own thing. And there's this one kind of thing in the middle of it where, kind of they have a team, but everybody else is on their own.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that point. Is at least with Sanity, they're while they're not like totally defined, it's pretty easy to draw your own conclusions and say
we've seen it before.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's get into some of the matches that took place at TakeOver. I want to start with what I thought was easily the match of the night, and I won't say that the match surprised people, but I don't know that people were necessarily looking at this match to deliver on the level that it did. And that's the UK Championship between Pete Dunne challenging Tyler Bate for the UK Championship. Now, I did not dip my toe into the UK tournament, so a lot of what took place there and who those talents were was sort of a blind spot for me. But I did manage to see Tyler Bate wrestle during WrestleMania weekend at Access. He headlined one of the Access sessions, and I thought it was truly fantastic in the ring. And as a result, when I saw Tyler Bate here on the card, I was like, okay, I saw this guy go before. This guy can bring it. I'm curious to see how this match is going to shake out. This match was incredible. Number one, bringing in Jim Ross to call the action of this match was an exquisite touch because he just knows how to call wrestling.
Yeah,
like listening to JR call this match, it made me wonder how come during the UK Championship match, no one can find Tom Phillips in the back and just lock him in a closet like for the rest of the show. No total disrespect to Tom Phillips, but it's night and day difference between listening to JR call a match and listening to like WWE guys just sell product. Because he's enthusiastic, he's authentic, and you just know that he's really into what he's watching, and it makes the match. Like, I thought if you had Tom Phillips call this match, it would have been really good. But to have JR call this match took it up a notch. So it went from like really good to exceptional. And this I thought was just, and it's only like 15 minutes, but every second of that match counted. It all mattered. Everything they did felt like impact. And for me, this was not only the match of the night, but probably the match of the weekend.
Yeah, and I kind of I like you said, I have not been really kind of down with either 205 Live or the UK Championship just because I just haven't been invested in terms of the characters yet, and kind of I'm more of a story guy than a wrestling guy at the end of the day with a lot of this stuff. And I can't, and so if the characters aren't really appealing, but I think, and because Dunn and Bates' characters are still kind of being worked on, they're young guys that they can go, but they're still working on their characters. Having a guy like JR come in gives them character. You think back to like Stone Cold, when Stone Cold becomes Stone Cold. About a quarter of how Stone Cold became Stone Cold was because of JR just flipping out every time he like entered with the breaking glass and came stumbling down to the ring and whooped ass. A quarter of like why Stone Cold is because JR is like going crazy on the mic, and I feel like JR helping out Bate and Dunn in that match is just giving them character and just kind of like making that match a lot more interesting, and you're invested in those guys more, even though you don't know their characters that much, because JR is kind of filling in the blanks.
Let me just go off on a quick tangent here because it popped into my head as you sort of bring up the Stone Cold, the sort of the rise of Stone Cold and JR's part in that. If JR was calling wrestling right now, and I don't mean wrestling as a whole, I mean WWE wrestling, do you think that he would be able to help get Roman Reigns over in the way they wanted him to be?
Oh God, that's a really good question. No, I think for some reason I don't get it, and I think it's just kind of like the current wrestling fan. I think the well's been poisoned on him in a way, and I'm not sure you could turn him heel even more so than he kind of is now, and people might like it. They can't put him over as a hero. I mean, even if you have like JR call every match for him at this point, I don't think.
Well, I don't necessarily mean like moving forward. I mean, like if we were going to the time machine back a little bit, like even just going to the fact that we brought up Braun Strowman trying to kill Roman Reigns, and the way that the fans sort of receive that. Do you think like if JR was calling that, appalling moment, it might have maybe not live in the arena at that point? I mean, once again, we have to go further back. But do you think it might have, garnered some sympathy for him or gotten people to maybe take a look at him a little differently because of the words that would have matched the visuals?
Maybe a little bit, but I don't think so. I think just the time frame when he came on the scene with the Shield, and kind of when the Shield broke up, of those three guys, he was kind of the one who both kept the same kind of like music, kept the same kind of gimmick as the Shield, because he really didn't have anything else. I mean, Dean Ambrose was kind of the crazy one. Seth Rollins was, the architect. He was the guy who was like, the second coming of Triple H, and he aligned himself with that. So he automatically had like a boost, kind of, he went from Shield to the Seth Rollins character, who's tied to, the Authority and everything. Roman Reigns was just kind of left out in the cold, like, okay, well, he's the big heater who has to just kind of go on his own, but he didn't really have a character, and he's never had, and from there, it's just never, fans themselves have felt like kind of like, okay, well, obviously WWE's pushing this guy as the next big thing. We kind of don't really like him. We're just going to kind of like boo him because of that. I think JR probably could have helped for a little bit, but I think that was just kind of like such a stumble in terms of that character after leaving the Shield. There was, he was just kind of like left to the wolves, as it were, and just kind of like, he doesn't have the strong personality. He could work, but he doesn't have the strong personality like a Stone Cold or even like Seth to a certain degree that would get him over as a solo character in a big enough way where you're like, okay, well, or like either as an underdog or as in like, kind of like a monster. He just doesn't have that. He just doesn't have that character. And as he's gotten better, we've had with promos and things like that. But the crowd just kind of turn on him early, and just kind of like set the tone.
Yeah, I'm just curious because of the fact that listening to JR call this match with Nigel McGuinness, the match just, it felt different. There was like a big fight feel that just sort of settled in for two guys who are like off the radar. That's the thing. These aren't regular. I mean, Tyler Bates shown up on NXT TV before, and like they've given him matches to defend the championship, but like he's not a regular there. So to have like two guys who really are only known to people who watch the UK championship at length and make people both in the arena and me sitting on my couch, and I don't think I'm the only one, but really become invested in what they're doing in the ring. that's something special. And like I said, the match itself was incredible, but listening to JR call it, and he would say, give credit to the two guys. But if you, but to have him call it with McGuinness, who I thought he worked really well with, I just thought it all came together like a perfect storm for that match.
Well, and I don't know. I'm not sure the particulars. They would really be if they don't use JR for the Mae Young Classic and to get all those women over, they're dumb.
I believe that's the plan. I believe that
is okay. If they don't, I mean, they're just dumb because I think if you putting JR with that automatically gives it a lot of cred, and a lot of those women, I mean, they're probably going to be pulling from the indie scene, Shimmer and whatnot, and WWE audiences aren't going to know who they are. But if JR can sell the hell out of anybody, so I feel like he would automatically give a lot of personality to a lot of people we don't know, and I think it would just help, all those women and all those that tournament just in general a lot. And I feel like that's the kind of the one thing that's really missing on WWE programming is, we had this like kind of like all these talented women kind of move up, but they, kind of a lot of them have fallen off their own radars just because they can't really get the characters are kind of in between. You don't really know what to do with them. We have Sasha wrestling Charlotte like 10 times in a row. I think JR can get those new women personality, get them over, get them personalities, and then you can spread them out in NXT and the main roster and everything, and really kind of create some interesting interactions and relationships. Whereas we don't have the same 5 women fighting each other every week.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, I think the real difference is one feels like product, and one feels like just genuine enthusiasm. Because even sort of going back to the Cruiserweight Classic, we had Mauro Ranallo and Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan's not really a commentator, but Daniel Bryan loves watching cruiserweight matches. So as a result, you have a guy who knows how to call this wrestling and is excited about it, and then analysis by a guy who loves watching this kind of wrestling because he was a part of it. I think when it comes to the Mae Young Classic, it'll be interesting because you'll have JR calling play-by-play, and I'll be very interested to see who he might be paired with as far as color commentary, because I really think you got to get a woman in there to do it. And in order to sort of lend credibility to it, I don't know who it's going to be. I thought Lita did like a fantastic job of analysis when she was doing sort of the pre-shows before that came to an abrupt halt. But yeah, I mean, I think the point of the point that I'm really trying to hammer home here, especially on this match, which don't mistake, like this was a incredible match. Everybody should go and watch this one. It's 15 minutes of just pure excitement, and a good story being told in the ring by them as well. It's just the importance that good commentary has on a match in getting people over to the home audience. And the people in Chicago were hot for that match to begin with. But guess what? When you're sitting at home and you get hot for a match and you get excited about these people, if you go buy a ticket at another point in time, you carry that baggage with you into the arena. You're excited to watch those people. So it's not just for the people at home. It's for the people at home to then bring it to the arena later. It's a long-term effect that good commentary has. And I think too often the WWE just sort of poo-poos the commentary. And that at one point was a real asset for them. And I think now it's become just a distraction that doesn't really serve their purpose.
Yeah, that's true.
So
well, they don't. They also don't have any comment. I mean, they don't have that like really strong commentator like a JR.
No,
or the kind of the we don't have a Jesse the Body or kind of like or Bobby the Brain. You don't have because JBL just isn't that kind of like the kind of the heel color guy.
I mean, I love Graves.
Graves kind of is.
Yeah.
Graves is good. It's getting better, but JBL just kind of isn't. And you think back to those old, what I grew up with Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain. I mean, that was classic. I mean, that was good stuff.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I think Graves. I love Graves, and we talked to Rich Bocchini like a few weeks ago, and I loved him as Rich Brennan and Corey Graves down at NXT. I thought they were sort of the future, and that got derailed, for one reason or another. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think they are missing like that good, strong, credible, solid sort of play-by-play voice, and then sort of the foil to work off of them in terms of just getting the matches over. I know you brought up the Women's Championship earlier, so we can get into that next because, that was the match that went on after the UK Championship match, which saw Pete Dunne claiming the title from Tyler Bates, so new UK champion Pete Dunne. But I thought that the Triple Threat Women's match had a real tough task of following what was a show stealer. And the women do always put on a really good show, especially down in NXT. And I thought they were put in just a real tough spot to sort of keep the crowd hot following what they had just seen. And while it wasn't, amazing, I thought these three women worked really well together. They told a really good story about putting Asuka in danger and sort of making a threat to her title reign, while at the same time sort of progressing this story of Ember Moon being sidelined and what's going to happen when she returns and if she's ever going to get another shot at Asuka. So in that respect, once again, I thought the women put on another solid affair.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, I think Asuka's a hard sell because, she's so good. And when you see her in the ring, you're like, no one's going to beat this, girl. I mean, she's going to kill everybody. So I think, it's almost like, how do you sell like somebody even kind of standing up to her and being able to like maybe beat her because she's they've kind of made her, so invulnerable in a lot of ways. And, and I think they did a good job of that, both with two other women and kind of like, and they all have different styles, yet they all kind of do complement each other in a lot of interesting ways. I think they're, it's that's them and Ember are obviously kind of like, the class of that NXT women's division. I think, they can do some more good matches. It's just a matter of like, they got to bring up Asuka at some point, soon. So who do you have beat her? I mean, do you have Ember beat her and then kind of like feud with Nikki or Ruby, or do you just keep Asuka down there?
I mean, she's been down there for she's been down there for a really long time now.
She should not still be there. I mean, she's better than like more than like 75% of the females on the main roster.
But she it's the Bayley problem, which is that you have to have somebody front that women's division, and
exactly.
And while all the other four horsewomen were being called up, and Bayley was getting the nod as the NXT Women's Champion, there was nobody else at that moment in time for her to pass the torch to until Asuka was there. And now Asuka is there, and she's undefeated, and she's had the championship in her grasp for like 400 and something days. But you look at it, you go, but who's going to take the mantle place like from her? Like, who is going to be on the pedestal for the women's division once she is gone? So I think right now that's that transition period that really kind of gets them stuck at times. But we'll see, because I think there's intrigue in who is going to be the one who finally beats Asuka. And long-term story planning wise, it would be Ember Moon. That injury, unfortunately, while unfortunate in the short term, long term, gave them a ready-made story. This one writes itself. They don't even have to do a lot here. They just have to rehab and play up sympathy and how much she wants it and how much she's fighting to get back to it. And Asuka just sort of writing her off as I already beat you. And then eventually the tide will turn and we will have a new champion. And then, Asuka can have a rematch and give Ember Moon the rub and, fantasy booking till SummerSlam or wherever we're going to. And then you can move Asuka up. But I think that is sort of the way that this would be would be Ember Moon as sort of the face of the women's division once she recovers, and then once again now you're transitioning new women into the mix. So yeah, I mean I thought it was a good match. I think this is sort of just a not a time filler because it sounds so derogatory, but a placeholder until we can get right back to sort of the women's division being on track with Ember Moon back to 100% and recovered from her injury.
And they might be timing it kind of to the Mae Young Classic too, because once you move Asuka up, then you have Ember obviously as kind of like the person to hold kind of as the main woman. But then you may have at least 2 or 3, come out of the women's classic, and whoever wins it can then automatically be kind of like a major contender. Plus, then you have Ruby and Nikki and those other 2 girls who I can never remember their names who are together. And so you have, and then that Lacey girl, and so you have. It's not like you have to like put somebody who's not ready. All of a sudden in that top spot, you can have a lot of women down there to kind of like organically find their characters and wrestle each other, where it's just like you don't have to have like, oh my god, we have to have the four horsewomen like right now or something.
Yeah, I think you will see like an influx of talent because you have people like Billy Kay and Peyton Royce. Clearly they've made an impression on you.
Peyton Royce, yes. The other one I couldn't remember.
But then you also have women like Aaliyah and Liv Morgan who are still sort of coming along and finding themselves and aren't really ready to be in those top spots. So I think, like coming out of the Cruiserweight Classic, you sort of have an influx of talent with guys like Cedric Alexander and Jack Gallagher. I think you'll have something similar with the women's division. You may see a Candice LeRae now in NXT full-time or whoever else they may wind up getting in there full-time to sort of help stabilize the women's division moving forward. All right, let's talk about the NXT Championship, which was not the main event on this particular show, which, I saw some people, cynical about that decision and sort of like, oh, well, this is what it says about the confidence that they have in Bobby Roode and Hideo Itami. I don't think it really says that at all. I think it says, hey, we have a ladder match going on last between 2 teams that put on a hell of a match at the last TakeOver. So as a result, we're going to give them that spotlight. Look, Bobby Roode versus Hideo Itami, for me, this was the match I was maybe the least excited about on the card. And I'll tell you why. Number one, in the short time I have seen a lot of Bobby Roode in NXT, I have determined I'm not really a Bobby Roode guy. I like Bobby Roode's entrance. I think Bobby Roode has some fantastic t-shirts. But when it comes to in-ring action, I think it may be a great deal because of sort of the matches he had with Nakamura. I just don't really find him all that compelling to watch. He's very old school, which I do always appreciate. Nobody loves a reverse chin lock like me, okay? Nobody likes arm bars and headlocks like me. I get super excited about body part selling, working body parts, selling body parts, injuries, telling a story through other events. I love that at times, okay? But with Bobby Roode, it's just for a guy who's so flashy, in his demeanor, in his outfit, in his personality, his in-ring style completely contradicts that. And he's very much, he's very basic, I guess, would be the word. So I am not a Bobby Roode guy. And when it comes to Hideo Itami, I feel bad for this guy in a number of ways, because injury really made him sort of the lost talent of NXT. When he first came in, as Kenta, and they immediately changed his name. And this was before all those other guys came in and got to keep their names. Guys like Samoa Joe, guys like Bobby Roode, guys like Shinsuke Nakamura. I thought that sort of took a little bit of the aura of Itami away right out of the gate. But the injuries also just hurt him. He had to be on the shelf a long time while people like Kevin Owens and Nakamura and Balor and Samoa Joe and all these guys were coming through the ranks, and Hideo Itami was really forgotten. And he's not really flashy either. So I thought when you had this match, you had two people who were not flashy working together. One who I'm not particularly a fan of, and the other who has just been sort of just forgotten. And you have him in a match for the NXT Championship, and I wasn't all that crazy about it. But with that said, I thought their styles worked really well together, and I thought this was the most solid outing I've seen of Bobby Roode since he signed on the line to join NXT. And overall, I thought the match told a good story, and I was fine with it.
Yeah, I think as unflashy as both are, or I guess Bobby Roode's flashing in his own way. Their styles do match each other. I think better so than I think Roode and Shinsuke did. In a lot of ways. I like Shinsuke enough. I like Bobby Roode enough, but I was never that. I never really got into their matches as well as I did. Like Kevin Owens against like Sami Zayn. They just don't have that same kind of chemistry, or even Neville and some of the folks he fought, especially for the championship. I mean, that's supposed to be your like main event, and I don't think the NXT title has been like a really main event for a while. So at least kind of there is that. The wrestling is at least good. Like you said about Itami, kind of. The care, kind of, he has been hampered a lot by injuries. They just haven't figured out what to do with him yet. Whereas, Shinsuke Nakamura is just like, you give him a violent guy to play him into the arena, and he effing goes to town. He's got the look, he's got the kind of like the quirky mannerisms, he's got the moves. He's a package deal. This was only going to be like a quick stop for him. Itami, he's got the ability, but he doesn't have character. He doesn't have the flash. You'd almost want to pair somebody with him to kind of like give him some kind of rub, or to kind of like somebody to kind of like boost his character a little bit, in terms of like, a valet or a tag team partner or something, because it's just on his own, he can wrestle like crazy, but it's just like, it's just, okay, well, there's not really any character, then whatever. And I think the same thing with Bobby Roode on the opposite. He's just like, he's got character for miles. It's just a matter of like, kind of getting the the wrestling better a little bit, and kind of he wrestles fine, everything, but it's just like you have to have a certain kind of guy to wrestle with him to have something special, and he just hasn't found anybody. He hasn't found that special dance partner yet.
Yeah,
he's very Ric Flair. We talked. You talked about kind of he's very old school.
Yeah,
Ric Flair had Dusty. Bobby Roode needs a Dusty. He needs that one guy that makes him better, and he makes better.
Yeah, just when you talk to Ric Flair and Dusty dynamic, I mean, one was flashy and the other was a common guy, and that's what worked. It was a battle over income inequality. I mean, that's really what it came down to. So I think to have something like Bobby Roode, this flashy guy who comes in his suits and he's corporate and he's gonna take on the NXT business to another level. I think you have to have a guy who's sort of grounded in a number of ways to sort of work off of him in that respect. Just sort of a tale of two cities almost, and see how that would work. And look, and when it comes to Itami, I wonder if they just made a mistake in having him be a babyface for them, because he came in to a lot of fanfare with people sort of being aware of who Kenta was overseas. But when you watch him work, there is some heel mannerisms to him that I think might make him better. He speaks English okay. He's not like Nakamura speaks English fairly well. Itami, when he came in, was still just sort of learning. And I think as he was injured, he busted out that Rosetta Stone and really got cracking to try and learn a little better. And his English has improved, but he's not going to be a talker for you. And I think that there's something to be said about having a heel who's just very cold and calculating and doesn't say a lot. And who knows, that could help Itami sort of find himself. But I think the injury sort of set back the development of him, coming stateside and getting used to, how the WWE works. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to see him find himself, because it does feel, I do feel for the guy that he was sort of just an afterthought in NXT for so long, as a guy who came in, with a lot of fanfare, sort of wrong guy, wrong place. He's like the John McClane of NXT at this point. So, but yeah, I thought the match was fine. I think keeping the belt on Bobby Roode was the right call. But I also think that the way that he sold for Itami helps Itami moving forward. He came out, even though he lost, he came out looking good from this match. So I think that they sort of killed two birds with one stone with the way this match was laid out. The main event of NXT TakeOver Chicago was a ladder match for the NXT Tag Team Championship. The Authors of Pain versus DIY, so the team of Johnny Gargano, Johnny Wrestling, and Tommaso Ciampa. I watched these two teams, along with the Revival, tear the house down in a three-way dance at TakeOver Orlando or WrestleMania.
It was a great
weekend.
match. Great match.
I did not know how this match could possibly top that match, even with ladders. I did not know how this match could top Pete Dunne versus Tyler Bate from earlier in the night. Primarily because the Authors of Pain are good at one thing, which is like just being dominant. They're not there for the wrestling portion of the show. So in Orlando, you had the Revival and DIY carrying most of that portion of the match, and then sort of the Authors of Pain come in and do the Roman Reigns spot, where they just come in and destroy people for a little bit. I was curious to see how this match would get laid out for the main event, with obviously a lot of expectation being put on it because it was now moved into the main event. I thought it was a really fantastic match, though. I thought they delivered. The Authors of Pain, I think, are getting better every time out. Just a little bit better every time out. A little bit better. A little bit better. They learned something new. A little bit better every time out. And DIY, I think, was like, they just work well together. They're two guys who are familiar with each other. Johnny Gargano is an absolute beast at selling. Okay, he goes to like the Sami Zayn school for selling, where everything looks ridiculously painful.
Everything hurts. Yeah.
And as a result, you feel like Johnny Gargano. If Johnny Gargano was bigger, Johnny Gargano could be an amazing babyface. I think he could still be an incredible babyface. But with the way we all know the WWE looks at their baby faces, he's still gonna have an uphill climb. But I thought this was a really solid match. There were some really cool spots in it. I watched two guys almost die jumping on a ladder that was right in front of them for some reason. And yeah, I mean, it was exciting. It was once again another exciting match when NXT's tag team division is cooking. they put on some really exciting matches, and I thought this was sort of in that same tradition.
But I have to wonder, and so everything was like almost a precursor to the ending. Obviously, the heel turn, which was I honestly I thought that was almost better than the match itself, just because of how like violent it was. But I wonder what they're doing with their tag team division, if they're breaking up their best team, and because Authors of Pain, like you said, kind of they have one setting. And it's a great setting, but it's one setting. And, and I guess there's, Sanity and stuff. I mean, they have a tag team in there too, but it's just like, you just moved up the Revival. You've now broken up DIY, which was the best tag team after that. What are you doing? So I wonder what their thinking is in terms of tag teams at this point.
Yeah, because they have Heavy Machinery, which is all right. You have TM61, two guys who can really wrestle, but I don't think have much character to them where people know who they are. And yeah, I mean, when it comes to the Authors of Pain, like the Authors of Pain remind me a lot of the Ascension, the NXT version of the Ascension, but not quite as good. The Ascension were very good, and they had two guys who were different. So they both brought something else to the table. You had one guy who was smaller and quicker, and one guy who was strong and powerful, and as a result, their dynamic worked together. These are just two big beasts. Like, these are just two monsters. Kind of remind me a little bit like the Twin Towers or like the Natural Disasters from a long time ago. But you're then limited with what you can do with them. You can make them unstoppable if that's your mission, but then at some point you're going to have to find a way to make other teams look credible against them without damaging them in the long run. So yeah, I thought the match was really good. But yeah, the heel turn at the end. See, I wasn't necessarily expecting the heel turn, so it kind of really got me. I thought this might have been the send off. Because this is sort of the way that NXT works a lot of times. Is like they'll give people who are there for a while, who have worked hard, who have done a lot of good for them, and they'll sort of give them the spotlight and then give them their time to shine and for the fans to appreciate them. And that's really how it sort of came together too at the end is, they lost the match. Gargano took like this sick ladder shot to the face, once again, selling like a madman. And then sort of they got like a standing ovation from the crowd. They sort of lingered on this a little bit. And I was curious. I was like, are these guys getting a call up? Because I don't know where they're going to slot, but like, what else is there to do? What else is there for them to do down in NXT? They've already won the titles before. They've now had 2 shots in a row at recapturing it. They didn't get it. Now they've given the Authors of Pain a rub. Is this sort of their swan song in NXT? And then the heel turn happened, and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. No, not this is awesome, because I've banned myself from saying this. This is amazing. And the fact is that over the months, fans have gotten a feel for who these guys are. And so when the heel turn happens, it's horrible. Like it's like Tommaso Ciampa is like immediately the most despicable human being in NXT, and Gargano once again selling like crazy. Gets over as this tremendously sympathetic babyface. And now you have a blood feud. Like right out of the gate, it's a blood feud. It's not even like two guys working into a blood feud. It's now like one guy questioning how this guy his friend could possibly turn on him, and this other guy just like looking down on somebody who's clearly was holding them back. I mean, we've been here before, but the execution of it was so well done. And these are two guys who, when they get in the ring, as we saw during Cruiserweight Classic, will beat the hell out of each other for our benefit. And it's going to make for some really excellent television.
Yeah. And it's always good in wrestling when you actually be surprised by something. And this was a surprise. And I think they wanted, and maybe it was more important than their tag team division to a certain degree. They wanted a blood feud. They wanted that kind of the Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, being able to have a program with two guys who have some really problems with each other and can tell a good story and, tell a new story, with people who are very talented. So it is kind of a step back in one sense, but it's probably two steps forward in terms of these two guys who can work together as a tag team, but maybe able to work together even better as opponents. And I think there's a lot of feuds kind of going on in NXT, but this is automatically like the best feud because there's actually something interesting behind it. It's not just like, okay, let's have Rude feud with the Tommy because we got nothing else for either of them.
Yeah, you're invested. Like you're already invested.
Totally.
And that I think is oftentimes missing with like some of the way these feuds come together is like making them matter, making them mean something. This actually means something. There was one other match on the TakeOver card that was Roderick Strong defeating Eric Young. That was the opener. I thought it was fine. Sure. Good build, a devastating finisher by Roderick Strong, and we'll see where that goes. So overall impressions of TakeOver. Did you dig the show?
Wrestling A plus, character storytelling, B minus.
Yeah, it's still coming along. Yeah.
All
right. So then the next night, the WWE walked into the Allstate Arena. Now we spent a lot of time talking about TakeOver because there was a lot to talk about. There's a decent amount to talk about when it comes to Backlash. So we'll go through it in sort of I won't say the lightning round, but we'll get through it fairly quickly because I don't know that there's as much depth to the WWE product, even the SmackDown show, as there is to sort of what you get at least in ring for NXT. But I think the obvious place to start with Backlash is in the main event. The WWE Championship on the line as the Viper Randy Orton puts the title up against the modern day Maharaja Jinder Mahal. The guy who on Raw was whatever, but the second he goes over to SmackDown, they go, we could use this piece. Because that's how SmackDown works. The island of misfit toys polishes you up and instantly makes you matter. So let's put it this way: going in, what was your take on Jinder Mahal being the number one contender and challenging for this title? And going in, did you think he had a realistic chance of becoming the WWE champion?
So it's interesting. So ever since they re-signed him and they put him on SmackDown, and he has been getting kind of a push. It was kind of a head scratcher because, up until then, we've known him as 1/3 of 3MB, kind of mostly a jobber, not, kind of the same kind of kind of like the xenophobic villain from like my childhood, it's just like the foreign guy who hates America, which, it's a little played out, but always seems to get heat, So nothing was ever remarkable about this guy. So I was just like, why are they pushing him? I just figured, okay, well, we need to give Randy somebody to fight, before, SummerSlam or something until his next big feud, or you put the title on AJ Styles, or you put the title on somebody else. Then I listened to Chris Jericho's podcast with Jinder Mahal. I've never heard an interview with Jinder ever, and I love his podcast. I love yours too, obviously. But I love Jericho's podcast because he lets those superstars and wrestlers, whatever you want to call them, be themselves in a lot of different ways. And I've become fans of wrestlers who I really didn't care for. After I listen to them talk and hear their stories and things like that, I've become more of a fan because I'm more invested in what they are. I listened to his podcast. Mahal's story kind of came across. He's a interesting guy. He's a smart guy. Power positivity and all that. I was a little bit more invested in him, so I started looking after I listened to it. I started seeing this kind of push and how they've been kind of kind of melding the story together. And I'm like, he's totally going to win because, WWE doesn't really surprise that often. And they've kind of made it clear that, like, okay, this guy's kind of our thing now. And I never thought Randy Orton was going to hold the title for a long time. I figured he was going to give it up to Bray, and Bray was going to bring it up to Raw, for goodness sakes. So I figured Jinder would win. So I was not surprised. I liked how it all went down with the Bollywood boys or Singh brothers or whatever you want to call them, and how they kept Randy from, like, they were kind of like the fools to Randy's every move. And Jinder kind of really was a kind of cool heel where he didn't really win. He was just like, he got a whole lot of help, which is kind of cool for that character in a lot of ways. And, and it was cool how, like, the Singh brothers got both thrown on their heads. They got out all right. It's cool. We can laugh about it now. But I really liked how they sold that entire match, because they're like, Randy should totally beat this guy, but yet he's got all this heel help who just, they're like almost indestructible henchmen robots who just won't go down. And then finally, when he finally looks like he might be able to get victorious, Jinder surprises him and wins. I loved how they told that story, and now I'm really interested in seeing, well, does Jinder hold on to it for a while? Is Jinder is Jinder going to be, fodder for AJ Styles? Who knows? But I don't know, and that's always a good thing when I don't know what's going to happen with these characters.
See, I told everyone that I could possibly tell that Jinder Mahal was going to be the WWE champion at the end of Backlash. And they were like, no way, no. And I was like, no, it is absolutely going to happen. Mentally prepare yourself to say that a member of a three-man band is now the WWE champion. I knew it was coming. And look, like I said, the dynamic between Raw and SmackDown is interesting because Raw takes people and doesn't know what to do with them and sort of breaks them. And then they send them over to SmackDown in exchange for people that SmackDown built up and polished nicely and sort of rehabbed. And those people go over to Raw for them to break again. But in the meantime, SmackDown takes like whatever pieces that they're given and they make lemonade out of their lemons. So you take... you look back at somebody like The Miz, who was on SmackDown and was sort of in no man's land. He was shooting movies, he was coming and he was going, he was whatever, and he went over to SmackDown, and particularly with the help of SmackDown Live, became a top flight heel. Probably one of the absolute best heels that they have in that company. And that was because of what they allowed him to do on SmackDown. Now he's over on Raw and he's sort of, floating in limbo once again, but SmackDown took him and he polished him up and he made him count for something. With Jinder Mahal, they did the exact same thing. And I've heard people complain about, like, how quick the ascent of Jinder Mahal on SmackDown was, and we saw him as a jobber and blah, blah, blah. I think over the past few weeks, they have done an incredible job of making Jinder Mahal seem legit. And to the point where when he got in the ring with Randy Orton, there was a real sense that he could contend for this title. And that goes to booking and storytelling. So, the match is sort of, whatever. I find Randy Orton matches to be completely monotonous, to be perfectly honest with you.
The Randy Orton matches.
Yeah,
I think you know what you're going to get.
They're all the same. They're all the same. They're like a cookie cutter mold of like a match just dropped into like mass production. So yeah, and Jinder Mahal is fine. He's not spectacular in the ring. But you also know that he's worked hard. I don't know how he got to be this ripped, just beast of a man from a dude who was pretty small at one point in time. He's also a super nice guy. Got drunk with him over WrestleMania 30 weekend.
He's not drinking anymore. I think that's why it looks like
that's probably why. Those were times of the past. But yeah, but having the Singh brothers really puts the whole package together for him, because they are henchmen. They're there to do the dirty work. He's able to get sort of that heel heat of of always just cheating or being opportunistic over distraction or whatever, and that helps him get over as a bad guy. And look, the only thing that I will say about Jinder Mahal that is confusing to me is that with the way Jinder Mahal has been giving like promos lately, Jinder Mahal is talking about how like people hate him and they see what they want in him, and like it's all basically like, you don't like me because I'm a brown guy who wears a turban, and I go, doesn't that kind of make him a baby face? In the way that we are right now, like, doesn't he kind of have a little bit of a point about sort of where America is at this moment in time?
It's a little meta. I mean,
yes,
it kind of works in a way because they're using a time old wrestling, trope, which is like the foreign guy who doesn't feel like America respects him, and he's going to put one over on America. I'm going to sing the Russian national anthem, damn it, and you're going to have to listen to it. It's age old, but it's. I think they see that it's just like how meta it is right now.
Yeah, it feels weird right now because he's like, I'm going to speak.
They know that, and I think they're using that to their advantage. Because
he's like, I'm going to speak in Punjabi to my people, and there are like people who are booing him, and I'm like, what's wrong with you people? It just feels. It almost feels backwards. So yeah, it makes me wonder how long is it before, quote unquote coastal elites start cheering for Jinder Mahal? It's just gonna be, I mean, look, I like the call to put the belt on him. I'm very curious to see how long this goes. I don't anticipate the belt going back on Randy Orton, so I think we may have Jinder Mahal for a little while. Maybe through the summer and see sort of what they can do with it. Because I think the longer he holds the belt, now he becomes a player in the main event picture, which is good for SmackDown because you don't want just the same guys there. So I would anticipate seeing Jinder Mahal hold the belt maybe till SummerSlam even. And then seeing him drop there, and then the magic will start to happen as you see guys like Nakamura and Sami Zayn and AJ Styles, and Kevin Owens, working together for the title, the main event picture, the WWE show. Holy Christ! Whoever saw that coming? No one. But it's here, and it's gonna be glorious.
But it's interesting. It's just like in what directions do they go though? Because the one thing about I guess downbeat from putting the belt on Jinder is if you have Owens and Styles feuding for the U.S. belt, which by the looks of that match on Backlash, that's going to go on probably for at least till SummerSlam. That's going to be the main program. I mean, that's going to be the main belt because those are the two best guys on that entire side of the roster and on the whole entire roster itself. So do you break off Shinsuke to go against Jinder? Probably not yet. Sami Zayn maybe. Baron Corbin maybe, but that doesn't make sense in terms of two heels. Now you've just got. I can't see a Randy Orton Jinder Mahal feud for any amount of time. No, so who do you now? Yeah, it's just like you got to have him. You got to have somebody wrestle him at SmackDown. Who do you? Or it's at SummerSlam. Who do you? What face do you put with him?
I don't know. And that's that's above my pay grade. But what I will say, at least with this, is that in a matter of a few short weeks, they have completely reestablished real value in Jinder Mahal.
Sure.
And that is something that Raw never seems to get, but that SmackDown does, is that when the guys on your roster have value, when they mean something, the second you put them in a match, people then care about the match. If you just have everybody just jobbing out or putting guys over all the time and you just sort of look at them as jokes, then that's how they're going to be treated. Breezango is a perfect example. Those guys were treated as jokes forever. and then they were wrestling for the tag team titles. I mean, the match is what it is. The fashion files are amazing. I'm a huge Tyler Breeze fan. Seeing Tyler Breeze dressed up as a janitor, a little bit weird. But they're making Breezango count. They're made Jinder Mahal count. They're making these people matter in a way that they hadn't before, and that's good for the overall show. All right, let's jump to the opener. Because this is what I was very intrigued with the announcement that Shinsuke Nakamura was going to be part of the opening of Backlash. I've seen people say, sort of look at that in once again another cynical fashion and say, oh, well, see, look, you have this guy, he's making a big debut, blah, 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 and now he's just opening the show. But at the same time, Chicago is a pretty smart and fanatical city for them to play in front of, and they're pretty aware. So I think to sort of give them the gift of Shinsuke Nakamura right out of the gate almost wins favor with them. So, like, you won't have CM Punk chants dominating the show, which I heard were actually shouted down throughout the evening. Anytime they were spring up
on Raw, it probably wouldn't have been shouted down, but here,
but here I think by putting Nakamura out first, giving the fans something to sink their teeth into, like right out of the gate, you get them into the show. So, what were your thoughts on Nakamura versus Dolph Ziggler?
I have to say, Dolph Ziggler, for all the kind of crap he's probably been put through over the years, God bless that guy, because I feel like he is the perfect guy for Nakamura to feud with because of how much they complement one another. Because Shinsuke is all like good guy, quirky dance moves, and violin guys and things like that. And then you have Ziggler, who's just like heel heat personified, and can really sell a lot of Shinsuke's moves. And he can talk. He could be the guy who talks, and Shinsuke can kind of be the guy who fights. They have a lot of interesting chemistry that really works well. And kind of if you're gonna have Shinsuke as the face here, Ziggler's a perfect heel.
Yeah, I thought Ziggler would be the right guy to open him with, because the only other person that I thought would make for a spectacular debut for Nakamura is Sami Zayn, and we already saw that. Or
Styles. I think Styles could be interesting.
Well, it's Styles, but at that point, Styles is also at an elevated level right now.
Sure.
That I don't think it helps him to sort of not toy with, but to be paired up with a guy who's just sort of coming in. My only sort of critique of the way this was set up was that Ziggler's been a guy who nobody cares about for the longest time. Ziggler's been so stop and start for so long that to have Ziggler in a match with Nakamura, while Ziggler, look, that guy works his ass off and he sells like crazy. And I love watching Dolph Ziggler in the ring because he makes everything count, makes everything look good. And I thought with Nakamura, he would then help him get over very quickly with people who may not be familiar with him. But at the same time, I understand the criticism of Dolph Ziggler getting in a lot of offense in that match and sort of making it a little more even throughout. When Sami Zayn fought Nakamura back in NXT for Nakamura's debut, Sami Zayn was established, on the rise. He was at a certain level that when Sami Zayn was laying in moves to Nakamura, you believed it because Sami Zayn was really good. So as a result, there was a real battle between them in that particular match. With Nakamura and Ziggler's not on that level that Sami Zayn was at. So to have Ziggler getting in a lot of stuff and Nakamura having to sell for that a lot, I think that's one of those things that the WWE does sometimes where then they hurt people coming in their debut. Nakamura should have sort of come in, I think, in spectacular fashion and really just brutalized Dolph Ziggler on a certain level to get him over really quickly with people who were like, oh, Jesus Christ, the hype on this guy is real. As opposed to like watching him get beat for a decent amount of the match. So I thought Nakamura looked pretty good. You know, those strikes are always brutal. I thought overall it was a solid debut, but I would have liked to see him dominate a little bit more of the match to sort of get him on that upward trajectory right out of the gate. Because Dolph Ziggler's not going up. I mean, let's face it. Like, Dolph Ziggler's sort of a plateau guy at this point. And you use him to achieve something for other people. And I think they undercut that a little bit here with how much offense Ziggler got in the match.
Yeah, and I think they also see Nakamura being able to help Ziggler a little bit. You said it, you know, kind of it wasn't as much of a domination from Nakamura, but I think he comes in with a lot of hype, and I think people know that. So I think, you know, by letting Ziggler kind of be dominant a little bit over someone who is like kind of internationally renowned and like has a lot of shine to him right now, but ultimately kind of lose, I think that helps both guys. Because I think it makes Ziggler a little bit more like, oh well, you know, kind of he isn't just kind of a pushover. He kind of stood his ground with this guy for a little bit, and obviously kind of gets Nakamura over too.
Yeah, I mean it you could read it those, you know, a couple of different ways. Look, the sky's the limit for Nakamura on SmackDown. You know, we sort of talked about the guys that he can work with. I mean, you know, go back to the match versus AJ Styles at Wrestle Kingdom just a few short years ago. I mean, that was a match of the year contender. So those are these when you. I think that's going to be the real key to Nakamura, is putting him in the ring with guys who can hang with him, wrestling wise. You know, Owens, Styles, Zayn. These are guys who they can make each other look good, and even if somebody loses, they don't come away bad from it. You know, they're even by losing, they all win. So I'll be very curious to see like where Nakamura goes next after Ziggler, because I think, you know, the talent is on this brand to really put on some special things in the coming months. And speaking of which, so let's jump to two of the individuals I talked about who can do something special with Nakamura. U.S. title on the line is Kevin Owens, the face of America. Goes head to head with AJ Styles. Now look, this match had a potential to be a show stealer. Okay, Kevin Owens and AJ Styles, these are guys who put on incredible matches night after night after night after night after night. Owens can work with just about anybody. Styles can work with just about anybody. They always elevate the other person and take them to the next level. And I don't know that we got that in this particular match. Now, I think this wasn't the show stealer that people anticipated it was going to be, but I also think it's because they're pacing themselves.
Oh yeah, totally.
You know,
totally.
This was not like there's going to be a clean finish and we're going to move on from this. This is like we're probably going to do this throughout the summer, and we're going to save the real good stuff for a later date. Like, this is long-term storytelling. This isn't this one particular match telling a story, although it did. This is this match being one chapter of a much larger book, and having a count-out victory for Kevin Owens. While in this day and age, I feel totally gypped by count-outs and disqualifications, I thought it was the right call. I thought it was smart booking. I thought it helped both guys stay protected and was, quote-unquote, best for business.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a better count. You know, count-outs are just kind of, you know, dinky. But AJ Styles getting his foot caught in, like, wires and not being able to get back in the ring, it's perfect. It's like, why has this not been, like, used ever before in life? You know, it's just like, that was so good, and you're like, oh, this is going to go on for a while. We're gonna be able to enjoy this, and because they were still doing kind of crazy stuff. I mean, you had the what was the power bomb or like the flip?
Oh, that's like a
Flip.
that suplex that I
Yeah,
thought Kevin
on like
Owens
the side of the ring. It's just like Jesus. I mean, they still did some crazy stuff, and it looks like they were going to do like a Styles Clash off like the side of the ring. I mean, that he wasn't going to do that, but it was like it was selling like
he could have.
Yeah, and it's just like so that it left a lot on kind of on the back burner, but it still did a lot of good stuff. And like I said, I mean, kind of you finally made a count out work.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, you go, you clearly want one of these two guys to win. Like, you clearly want a decisive victor, but at the same time, that this isn't it. So I'm perfectly okay with like a cheap count out victory. But the way it was done and knowing that this is not the end of what they're doing, I was fine. I was like, yes, a count out here is genius. Mm-hmm. And I don't think those words have ever come out of my mouth before, ever. So kudos to you, count out decision maker. You get a gold star. So yeah, I mean, Owens and Styles, going into that match, you look at it and you go, man, this has the potential to be, like a 5-star match of the year contender. Not this night. That doesn't mean we're not going to get there. They're taking their time. But don't be surprised if, once again, maybe we're looking towards SummerSlam, we get one that just tears the roof off.
Oh, this is going to end up in a cage. I bet you money this will end up in a cage.
Woo! Cage match for the U.S. title. Oh man, the WWE Championship's going to look pale in comparison. I mean, look, the rest of the card is got some hits and misses. I mean, just real quickly, I guess I'll hit you up. Was there anything else that stood out for you as far as the rest of Backlash was concerned?
I like the Sami Zayn Baron Corbin match. I think they complement each other pretty well. They need to do something with Charlotte. Charlotte should never be a good guy. That's totally wrong. And somebody needs to do something about Tamina's wardrobe. It's the Nia Jax thing. They gotta stop doing like the weird Nia Jax like black armor outfit. It looks terrible.
Yeah, I'm there with you on Sami Zayn and Baron Corbin. I've seen Sami Zayn and Baron Corbin work before. I saw them actually as the opener at an NXT house show down in Miami like 2 years ago, and it was the best Baron Corbin match I've ever seen. And I thought Corbin was like putting it all together. He had great like heel crowd interaction. Sami Zayn once again is sells like a mofo. I don't think that the Backlash match was as good. I don't know what was going on with Sami Zayn. I don't know if he had like a back issue that was legit, or once again that was Sami Zayn selling like crazy and making believe he had a back issue that was hampering his ability to carry out an outstanding match. The mystery of Sami Zayn, one can never know. But the dude takes a beating like nobody else. He becomes a sympathetic babyface. I thought rallying for a sudden haluva kick was a way to sort of get him out of this match and make it look good. And once again, Barry Corbin is sort of protected because he dominates the match, and then it's sort of a flukish victory that then allows them to keep the story going forward. But I thought this would be a match that could surprise a lot of people. I don't know that this match necessarily got to that level, but if given the time and on a future pay-per-view, I think you're really going to see something surprising from Sami Zayn and Baron Corbin. So I thought this particular match wasn't quite there, but I like their program, and I like to see where it goes next. And yeah, as far as the rest of the card, like Luke Harper versus Eric Rowan, who cares? Usos and Breezango, I talked about it earlier. Breezango, I think, still needs to get some more credibility to them a little bit to not be seen as a total joke. But the fashion files are amazing. And the 6-man tag is sort of like a mixed bag, the 6-man women's tag, because you have some people in there who are they're just better workers than others. And and it kind of makes for an imbalanced match. So we'll see sort of where that goes. So overall, what are your thoughts on Backlash?
I would give A- total. I liked it.
All right. Two pretty good shows, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think TakeOver was overall the better show from top to bottom. But there was some cool stuff to come out of Backlash and some intriguing things to make you want to tune in and watch SmackDown Live and see where things go next. Particularly with Jinder Mahal. So look, lots of wrestling for you to cover here as far as the WWE and NXT universe this past weekend. So I hope you enjoyed a lot of it. And if you tipped into the UK Championship as well, I hope you dug that too. So just a lot of stuff. And now hopefully we can take a little bit of a break and because the Raw pay-per-view is coming up next and well, we all know how that's going to go. So look, with that said, before I let you go, Mr. Brian Truitt, let everybody know out there where they can find you in the interwebs and beyond.
You can find my writing at life.usatoday.com. I'm on Twitter at Brian Truitt, and I also co-host the Mothership podcast, which you can find on Stitcher, SoundCloud, and iTunes, and everywhere you get your favorite podcasts.
Brian Truitt, man, it's been a long time. Thank you for coming by and talking wrestling with me this week. I appreciate it.
Anytime, man.
We will have to do it again.
Sure.
All right, Brian Truitt, make sure you get all this good stuff out there on the interwebs. So thanks to him for stopping by. Oh, you know what time it is, though, right now. It is time for the Tom Nix portion of the IWC. So, resident guru, expert, whatever it is that you want to call him, as part of this particular extravaganza and ordinaire show, whatever it is, because we're putting in some time this week. Well, he's here. You make sure you follow him on Twitter at the Tom Nix. Tom Nix. Tom.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Tom, look, I'm going to give credit to Tom right now before we even get started, because in order to make this portion of the show happen this particular week, Tom has driven hours upon hours upon hours after partying hard seeing U2 last night and still has a voice left to discuss wrestling.
Yeah, I'm very impressive. You all can send your fan letters to at the Tom Nix, and I will read them all. I will respond to the pretty girls, and you're welcome.
All right, so look, we have as we've talked about on this week's show throughout, tons of wrestling throughout the weekend when we're talking about the WWE Backlash, talking about NXT TakeOver Orlando, talking about the UK special on the WWE Network, Evolve 84, Evolve 85, just wrestling out the ass. But now we're going to talk about something that we haven't gotten to talk about too much on this particular show. We talked a little bit a couple weeks ago, but we're going to talk about it a little bit deeper now, and that's some New Japan Pro Wrestling. And that is because Tom set us up with homework as we headed in to watch the Best of the Super Juniors tournament. Is it a tournament? Or is it just
Yes.
It's a tournament.
No, it's a tournament. Yeah, it's a round robin tournament, which is not something you see very often in America. We normally have, like the NCAA, the Super Bowl, and King of the Ring, RIP King of the Ring. It's just two teams fight each other. The winner goes on to the next round.
Yeah, we just have brackets.
This is where you have two sections of wrestlers, Group A and Group B. Everyone in Group A fights everyone else in Group A. Everyone in Group B fights everyone else in Group B. And then the winners of those two brackets, or not really brackets, those two categories,
they're pools,
will then fight the winner of each one. So no one in Group A fights anyone in Group B except for in the finals of the tournament.
So do you get points? Is that how that works?
Yeah. So if you win, you get 2 points. If you go to a draw or go over the time limit, it's 1 point to each person. And then if you lose, you get 0 points. So, and then at the end of the tournament, at the end of your block, you will add up those points. And then if there's a tie, then you go back and see who beat who in their match. So like, if like Ricochet and Will Ospreay end up with 8 points apiece or 10 points apiece this year, you would go back and look at the Ricochet Will Ospreay match, see who won that match, and then say, well, then obviously that person is better. He wins his side of the tournament.
Oh, so we go into like head-to-head strength of schedule, and now we start going in deep into the tiebreakers as far as who would move on. Okay,
yes.
So the two matches we had set up for this week, none of which involved Harley Race and Dusty Rhodes. So that was a welcome for me. But two Will Ospreay matches. So we had Will Ospreay versus the villain, Marty Scurll, as well as Will Ospreay versus King Ricochet. Are we officially crowning him King Ricochet?
It's an honorary title. I still think his name is Ricochet. He just likes to go by King Ricochet because, whatever. Just let him have his silly crown.
Okay, so those are the two matches that were on the homework. So I guess to put in some context, Tom, where these two matches, I guess, sat within the round robin as well as the tournament, and sort of set the stage for let's start with, I guess, the which one occurred first. Time-wise.
Marty Scurll versus Will Ospreay was on day 1, and Will Ospreay versus Ricochet was day 2.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Let's go chronologically because it makes sense both just time-wise as well as I think dramatically. So let's set the stage a little bit for villain Marty Scurll versus Will Ospreay. Maybe give a little bit of background, particularly on Marty Scurll, who I think may be a little bit under radar for some people. I think Will Ospreay, especially coming off the match with Ricochet, which we'll get into in a few minutes, maybe a little bit more known. So I guess just sort of set the table for this match before we get into it.
So again, this is the Battle of the Super Juniors, or Best of the Super Juniors, which is a tournament that happens every year in April and May. Am I right? May and June? God damn it, I forget. Anyway, it's sometime in spring.
It's sometime between March, April, May, and June.
Yeah. So 4 months. It's one of those 4 months. It's got to be May and it ends in June. Yeah, it begins in May, ends in June. So, and this, it's gotta be May. It's, so essentially.
That just happened. Okay.
So,
you've been saving that one.
Essentially, it's the G1 tournament for people that are under 200 pounds, where they invite a bunch of cruiserweights, for lack of a better term, from all over the world. Obviously, many in Japan, many in Britain. You'll have some Americans, and you'll have some luchadors from Mexico appear as well. So it's an invitational, and this is the very first year that Marty Scurll has ever competed in this event. Marty Scurll you may know him from Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. You may know him from Progress Wrestling. You may know him from Ring of Honor. He won the Battle of Los Angeles last year, so he is a bona fide tournament winner in his own right. But his character is the villain, and he is very, very popular in Great Britain as being kind of the ultimate dastardly heel. He will break your fingers. He will step on your toes. He will trick you into thinking you're going to get kicked in the shin, and then he'll knee you in the face. He is a jerk, and he carries an umbrella and I forget what they're called, but he has a mask that he wears to the ring that used to be like a gas mask in the early 19th century. They have a name, and I can't remember it. But he's really doubled down on the whole just being a complete piece of shit, and that is. And that's why he's gotten so over is he just delights in being a bad guy, and he's really easy to boo, because he's a cheater. And Will Ospreay is the last year's winner of the Battle of the Best of Super Juniors, so he's going for a 2-time repeat, also super over in Great Britain, and he's just kind of like the king of the high flyers right now. So it's a high flyer versus someone who's a little more on the technical submission side. In Marty Scurll, and a huge clash of personalities where you've got the complete white meat babyface of Will Ospreay versus the dastardly heel of Marty Scurll.
That's right. The villain versus the aerial assassin. Those are the two monikers and battling it out in this particular match. And look, here's where I want to sort of start as we sort of dissect this match a little bit, is that when it comes to Will Ospreay, Will Ospreay's been a little bit of a mixed bag for me. I know you're like a huge Will Ospreay fan.
Well, I'll qualify that. I am a huge Will Ospreay fan, but at the moment, because I watch these two matches, I think they're both very good matches. But after a while, you kind of are like, okay, Will, I get it, So it's not like I don't like Will Ospreay, because I really do like Will Ospreay. He's super fun to watch. But you also kind of know what you're going to get into when you hit a Will Ospreay match, which you'll be very happy to know that next week's homework involves 0 high flying.
Oh, and hopefully 0 Harley Race. But so here's where I sort of come at Will Ospreay, and I meant to talk about this, and I overlooked it when we were talking about the Scrappermania main event, which involved Will Ospreay as part of the Uptown Funkers, is that having seen Will Ospreay sort of last year in the match against Ricochet, the one that sort of put him and Ricochet on the map in a number of ways, which we'll get into once again in a couple of minutes as we talk about the sort of the sequel. I looked at Will Ospreay as sort of as we talked about also last week with the indie wrestling, the flippy guy, not necessarily my cup of tea. I am one of those people who was down on that Ospreay Ricochet match last year, a little just too choreographed, a little too finesse happy, I guess, for my liking, just a little too acrobatic. I don't crap on it to the point that like Vader looks at it and is like, this isn't wrestling.
Vader jacks himself off while he just screams at his screen and just jerks himself off. He's so goddamn angry.
I don't even want it. That's a visual I do not want in my head. But
Vader.
Yeah, but I see his point to the and look, we talked about this last week that there is no one way to do wrestling.
No, someone's gonna do a thing in wrestling that's gonna piss you off because you don't think it looks real enough, or you don't think it's appropriate, or you don't think it adds anything to the match. It's gonna happen. You're gonna see someone do something that just is gonna be like, that's stupid. Why do people like that? And then you just gotta step back and be like, oh, I don't like it. I just won't watch that match, and I'll watch something I like, and then shut the fuck up.
Yeah, so you know what? So when I watched that match last year, Ospreay Ricochet won. As far as in the Best of Super Juniors, I was kind of like, I don't get it. Like, I know a lot of people were really into that match and super excited about it, and everybody was jazzed and spreading it around and wanted to show like anybody who was a wrestling fan this match, and I was like, I don't see it. Like, it's just, this doesn't do anything for me. And I didn't look at myself like I was broken. I was like, I don't know what the hell's wrong with the rest of you. But so having seen that, and then going into the Scrappermania match, Will Ospreay worked a little bit of a different style there too, because he was less acrobatic than I had seen him in the past in that match against the Elite, and a little bit more grounded. Now, granted, he still has elements of the high flying to his arsenal, because that's his thing, being the aerial assassin. But I found that he worked a little bit more of a grounded style in that particular match, and I was wondering, is it then who he's matched up against? Does he alter his style based off of who he's matched against? And maybe he just does this. Maybe he just goes back to that when it's against Ricochet, because he knows that that's a guy who can sort of hang on that level with him. And it's one of those things like they do it because they can. So heading into this match with Marty Scurll, I was interested to see how Will Ospreay would compete in this particular stylistic clash. And I'm going to tell you, I really enjoyed this match, and I think one of the main reasons, and then I'll let you sort of jump in here, is that the roles were clearly defined in this match, and as a result, you knew not who you necessarily wanted to root for, but probably more like who you should root for. Marty Scurll as the villain, yes, comes down, as you said, very dastardly. His sort of mannerisms are very heelish. His attitude is very heelish. It's very clearly defined that this guy is a bastard in the ring, and why should you root for him? And that, and that is one of the things that we talk about all the time when we talk about wrestling is not confusing your audience. Give your audience clearly defined roles of who they should root for and who they shouldn't. And, there's going to be people who go against the grain, people who cheer for the heels and boo the babyface. It's just the nature of the beast. But I think if you give them something like this, it's so much easier to get a large portion of your audience behind that. And then you could really lead them to water wherever it is you want them to go.
Oh, I agree. And I like I said, I really enjoyed this match too. It wasn't exceptionally long to a point where it got super drawn out.
No, it was only about 15 minutes, I think.
Yeah, it's I'm a big fan of heels and baby faces and them playing that up to add drama to the match. And yeah, you can have drama in, how you actually perform in the ring. But I think this guy being a jackass and this guy being the hero trying to overcome the jackass really helps the overall story of the match. And I thought this one worked really, really, really well. And again, I like Will Ospreay, but I liked him being partnered up with someone he's worked with a ton, so they have great chemistry, but someone that is not also a high flyer, someone who definitely does ground Will Ospreay, makes him do a little more, reversals as opposed to just flipping around and doing really cool stunts. And someone that, if he gets him locked in a submission, he has to work to get out of it because Will Ospreay is not a submission guy. So I thought it really added. I just thought this was an excellent match. It was an excellent first day match to get things kind of like kicked off and get you kind of in the mindset of what to expect from this tournament.
Well, and plus, the other point that I really wanted to raise here as far as Will Ospreay was that his athleticism was mainly used to either counter or reverse a lot of times in this particular match. It wasn't necessarily to always be on the offense. A lot of it was, somersaults and cartwheels and flips and twirls and twists to get out of simple arm ringers and arm bars. And the match. I knew the match was heading in the right path when I believe they started off with a front face lock, which you know what a fan I am of these simple moves. But yeah, I think.
Never mind.
But look, I think. Yeah, having seen Will Ospreay before, I think when he works against somebody who isn't, as you bring up, a high flyer, it forces him to sort of expand what he does and how he does it, and grounds him a little bit more. So yes, so I think this match it worked at a little bit more of a slower pace. There was still some flurries, which I'm fine with. Look, I always nitpick matches like this and say I wish they sold more, because they just don't. I want to see a guy who, if he has to rally with a reversal to sort of change the momentum of the match, really show that he had to put everything into that swing, rather than just take like 50 chops to the chest and then, oh my God, look at this amazing move he just pulled off with all of his energy, and he's still standing as if something didn't happen. So I mean, look, if they sold a little bit more, the match would have resonated a little bit more for me. But I will say that, like, having two clearly defined roles in a match goes a long way. I thought this is a really good match. Had a solid interaction as far as the finish was concerned. with Ospreay going for sort of his springboard cutter and being met with submission.
The king of the chicken wings, yeah, Billy.
And I mean, it was just a good sequence, and one, it also kind of came out of nowhere too. So yeah, I mean, I liked watching these two guys work together. I really dug the match, and I think this was a solid homework recommendation, Tom.
Yeah, I think I of the two, I was positive you would like this one more, but and I may be wrong. I may be wrong. I don't think I'm wrong, but I may be wrong. Okay. But again, like Marty Scurll is, like you said, like I don't think he's underrated by any means, but he just doesn't have the name that Ricochet or Will Ospreay or the Young Bucks or Kenny Omega have. And he is just as good as those guys in his way. So I hope people pay more attention to him, because, like I said, last year he had a phenomenal year. Winning the Bola is a huge deal, but he didn't really seem to capitalize on it, or he didn't seem to really gain any more, a foothold in the world of wrestling for doing it. So the more people go out and watch Marty Scurll be a complete dickhead for a living, the better the world is.
I mean, I think it comes down to his style. He's not flashy. He's not necessarily super exciting to watch, I would say. He's good. He's solid. And I don't mean that as like a backhanded compliment. I mean, like, he's solid. What he does really well. And a lot of what he is going to do is based much more around character than sort of just in-ring action. So I think if he gets a platform to really show personality more, I think that's where he has a chance to shine, as opposed to somebody like Will Ospreay who's building his reputation based off of what he can do in the ring, as opposed to, him going out and talking people into the building or whatnot. His actions speak louder than his words, and I think the opposite is for Marty Scurll, where his words will speak a lot louder than his actions, even though his actions are solid. But you're going to want to pay to watch that guy get his ass kicked, as opposed to pay to watch him necessarily work.
Oh yeah, no. He is definitely, like, his whole career lives and dies on that character. I think he's really good in the ring. Like, he could go with anybody and have a good match with anybody. But like you said, he's not about being flashy or super impressive or like stunning you with his ability. He sells the character, and the character is what's important.
Okay, so Marty Scurll and Will Ospreay, that was on day one. Day two, after this nice tight 15-minute affair, day two brought about 45 minutes of sequel. Will Ospreay versus King Ricochet, part 2. In the Best of the Super Juniors. So like I said, going back 1 year ago to watch their first encounter in this tournament, I was kind of underwhelmed. From all the hype that match brought about, I was kind of underwhelmed because of the fact that, like, it was just guys flipping around the ring, which is fine. If that's your thing. That's your thing. But for me, I just, it didn't feel like, yeah. So coming into this, I won't say that I was skeptical, because every time we go into a match, I go with an open mind. Like, I don't go in being like, well, this is going to suck. I will say I did go in going like, is this really like 45 minutes? I don't know how they're going to be able to do what they did last year for 45 whole minutes. So in that respect, I was a little bit kind of giving the match a side eye, but I was willing to jump into it. And I will say this: this match came really close to falling off the cliff for me. Okay, real early, it seemed like just a redo of last year. Lots of clearly choreographed exchanges, lots of acrobatics, plenty of athleticism, which is impressive to watch. I'm not going to deny that. I could still watch that and go, shit, I can't do that. That's cool to see. But it doesn't get me emotionally invested in any way. It doesn't grab me to really care about what's happening. And then the match kind of turns a corner, and they start making their moves matter a little bit more. Ricochet is taking control of this match. Ricochet is dominating Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay is selling for Ricochet. And my mind started to be blown. And I started to get into the match a little bit deeper. This is interesting. Now, once again, there are still those parts where you have flurries of exchanges that are they just come from nowhere. People just pull energy and offense out of their ass from nowhere. But at the end of those exchanges, when Will Ospreay is able to pull out some crazy corkscrew plancha super kick and land it to sort of maybe reverse the momentum of the match, Will Ospreay's then also down on the mat, clearly exhausted from this burst of energy he just unleashed to get himself back in the match. And I started saying to myself, maybe these guys learned a little bit from last year. Maybe they took some of the criticism to heart a little bit and try to come up with a little bit more of a well-rounded match. And as the match got deeper, I got into the match further. And as it got deeper, I got into the match further. And I thought this was a really good match. It was a match that I found to be exciting at times. It was a match that really walked a fine line, but once it made the effort, I was in. I could not abandon ship. They grabbed a hold of me. They did not let me go. And once again, it all comes down to selling the moves. If you do that, you'll get people in the palm of your hands. Oh no, what happened? Is he hurt? How can he come back from this? How can he overcome these odds? It's a clear formula. Don't break it. Just you can tweak it, you can toy with it, you can make it your own, but it's so simple. And when you do it and you do it right and you give effort to doing it, you have a match like this that is pretty exciting. A little bit long, but still pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, like, again, the match went long, but I thought they improved on their first match because it was less of a superhero showdown, even though there's parts of that, and it really became more of like, okay, last year we kind of put everyone on notice for the kinds of shit we can do. This year, let's really, really make it about, who actually is better, because now everyone wants to see this match again. Personally, I think the right guy won, because I'm really interested to see what happens if he wins 2 years in a row. But it was, no, like you said, like, they were pulling out some pretty impressive technical aerial moves, but they felt like they were doing damage and meaning something and weren't just hey, look at how flippy I am. Look at how long I practiced being able to do this. They actually moved from having a high flying showcase to having a legitimate match.
Yes. And you when you bring up sort of the call, you couldn't have Will Ospreay lose 2 in a row.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
I'm glad he lost to Marty, because that immediately makes Marty look more important. But yes. I'm glad he was able to beat Ricochet the next day, because that reestablishes him and it keeps him in the running for winning the whole tournament twice in a row. Plus, I just feel like Ricochet is just slowly moving towards the big leagues at this point, and we don't really need him to be successful in the indies as much, because he's just successful by showing up. And I think I still think Ospreay has something to prove in New Japan, because he's part of a stable. He's kind of like Kazuchika Okada's understudy to a certain extent, and there's a story to be told there. Like, if he keeps winning his division, then that brings prestige to the Chaos stable. That maybe will put him into a contention for like a never open weight title or a non-junior title one of these times, simply because of that. I just think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of good storyline with Ospreay winning these matches. But again, I'm glad the villain got his day and immediately set himself up. Hey, this is my first match of the tournament. You guys have never seen me before, and I just picked off the winner of last year's tournament.
Yeah,
you're welcome. You know.
Yeah, and plus it adds drama to the pool. You know, because now you have some parity there where it looks like anyone can beat anyone at any given time, and it adds drama and unpredictability to matches.
And the more you watch these New Japan Pro tournaments, the more you realize the bookers absolutely hate people who have brackets.
They're like, oh, you think this is how this match is going? Well, I think that's not going to be.
The frickin' New Japan Cup was like, I think I talked about this, but like there was like 1,200 people that submitted a bracket on the Reddit Squared Circle to like fill out who was going to win it, and by day 4, 0 people could win the bracket.
Yeah, that's
like I think day 2. It was down from 1,200 to like 57.
Yeah, let this be a lesson to you bracket pickers out there. You always must have Cinderellas in your brackets. You always must have Cinderellas in your brackets. Always go with the 12-5. You need a 12-5.
And sometimes your Cinderella looks like Tomohiro Ishii. So
it happens.
Enjoy that.
It happens.
Stone life. He did not win, but still. Anyway, the Best of the Super Juniors is shaping up to be really, really good. I'm glad you enjoyed both those matches.
I
definitely thought you would enjoy Skrull more than you enjoyed Ricochet and Ospreay. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it nonetheless, because it was a different match than what you saw last year.
You know what? And to that point, I thought too, because I watched the Ospreay Skrull match and I said, man, I really like this match. And then what happened was the first like quarter of the Ospreay Ricochet match, when it almost fell off the cliff for me, I was like, man, how much longer is this match gonna go on for? That I gotta watch it all the way through just for the show. And then as it turned and I got into it, I started to question which match I might actually like more. I don't even know that I have a clear, concise answer for you because of how much the Ricochet Ospreay match managed to win me over time. I would agree with you. I do think just on its very foundation, I think it might be the Ospreay Skrull match. But look, I'll give Ricochet and Ospreay credit for capturing my heart on this particular affair.
They changed their mind because wrestling is for everybody, and just because two wrestlers are wrestling again does not mean you're going to get the same match and the same story, and that's why wrestling is great.
I think changing hearts and minds, Will Ospreay and Ricochet, that's the key to the future of the world. I wish they would fight 85 more million times. No, I don't.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
I don't have that kind of time.
Can't wait to see them on 205 Live getting no reaction in 3 years.
Oh, that was sad. All right, so let's move on from that bummer into whatever it is that we have assigned for next week. So, Tom, what is on the agenda for next week's homework?
Well, first of all, I do want to say that I'll be going again to WrestleCircus this weekend for Lucha Carnival. This is the first time they've had I guess it's kind of like a Lucha Libre showcase. It'll be very interesting. So I'm very happy to see that show. I'll be talking about it next week.
Which night is that on?
Saturday night.
Saturday night. Okay, I'm going to see if I can get in to watch that one now.
Man, Juventud Guerrera is on this show, brother.
I didn't know he was still around.
I did not either.
What is he like? 83 years old now?
86, correct. But Juventud Guerrera is showing up. The Lucha Brothers, Pentagon and Phoenix, are on the card. There's going to be another crazy baller 6-man main event. This time it actually is the main event. So yeah. Anyway, I'm just excited about that show. I think it's going to be really good because I have a soft spot for Lucha Libre wrestling, and I'm glad that a Texas company is showcasing Lucha Libre, even though they do tend to have lucha matches every so often in their regular events.
Of course.
I'm happy they're. I'm happy
Trash Man. The Trash Man is about as lucha as you can get. Okay, I just want to put that out there. You can't get more lucha than the Trash Man unless you just put a mask on him. If you put a mask on him, man, that's straight fire right there.
Becky Lynch, watch out! George Gatton, the Trash Man's coming after you. So anyway, that'll be my next week recap, is talking about that show. By the way, if you go to if anyone who's listening to this is interested in watching WrestleCircus. Right now, they are having a little, I don't want to say a competition because it's not really a competition. It's more of a challenge. Let me go pull this up real fast because I think you all need to know what is happening. If you go to WrestleCircus, not WrestleCircus.com, go to WrestleCircus on Twitter, at WrestleCircus, there is a tweet that if it gets 2,000 retweets. Currently, it's sitting at 1,476, so there's about a day left to make this happen. And we only need 500 more retweets. If it gets to 2,000 retweets, then they will make the entire Lucha Carnival show available for free on Eric Bischoff's channel. So you don't even have to pay $9.99. You can just go to Eric Bischoff's site and watch the entire event for free if they get 524 more retweets in the next day and a half.
All right, listen. I have like 2,600, so I'm gonna go right now. I just take over the rest of the show, Tom, while I take care of this. So I mean, if I can save $10, like I will, I'm just putting it out there. And look, and also, just one quick note. I don't want to be defeatist. Okay, I don't want to be skeptical. I'm just using this as a plan B, in case they don't cross that plateau. If you want to spend your $10 on WrestleCircus.com to get the iPPV, just know that you have to watch it live. You cannot jump in later or afterwards and say, well, now I'll get caught up. No, you have to watch it in the moment, or else you have to write them an email, in which case they will grant you a very nice free month at WrestleCircus.com to watch later once the show goes on demand. But you have to watch it live. So make sure that you know that going into your Saturday evening, if you choose to have to pay for WrestleCircus. But I'm confident we can get however many
I
few
think it'll
hundred.
Be, and if not, if for some reason it doesn't pass, which I think it's going to pass, they have already announced that the first hour is free because they passed 500 retweets of that quote. So even if you did just want to check it out and see what WrestleCircus is all about, at bare minimum, the first hour of a 4-hour show, just so you know.
So it's like the pre-show.
Is going to be available for free. But again, this company is not exactly small fry. It's got a lot of people supporting it. It's already almost at 2,000 retweets now. I would be very surprised if we do not get a free show this month. So if you're new to WrestleCircus, never watched it before because you don't know where to or you don't live in Texas, help spread the cause. Get the retweets going so you can watch a bunch of awesome Lucha Libre wrestling for absolutely free on Saturday night.
I'm going to tell you what, man. They should send us some cash for the plug that they get on this show.
Kid Cash? Yeah. Just send Kid Cash to our house so he can do our landscaping.
So you hang out with me, babysit my kids, hang out in the pool, drink some beer. I guess. By the way,
Kid Cash to imply that you're unemployed.
By the way, do you know who is calling the action for this particular show?
I do. It's the same announced team as last time. It's Rich Bocchini and Lance Hoyt.
Okay, so look, Yeah, at the very least, you're going to get a 1 hour pre-show of WrestleCircus. So look, the benefit of that is that you get a pre-show that does not have Peter Rosenberg or Sam Roberts on it. So like that's a cool bonus. You are gonna have to trade that off for Lance Hoyt. So like you're gonna have to weigh that one a little bit. But look, hey, they can't all be winners. Okay, so just you take the good, and you take the bad. You take them both, and there you have the facts of life. Okay.
And you're getting after me for doing Justin Timberlake. Jesus Christ.
Is his name Justin Timberlake? Jesus Christ. They're two different guys. Okay. So Tom.
But you can't tell 20-something girls that. I'll tell you what.
All right, Tom. What is the homework assignment for next week?
The homework assignment for next week. I think I've given you guys enough high-flying and high-impact wrestling for a little while. So, for your homework, I have decided to get Billy Donnelly super excited, and we are going to be digging in to Evolve 85, the most recent Evolve pay-per-view. I'm actually not going to recommend a title match, although they were both good. I'm not even going to recommend the Keith Lee match, which is breaking my heart. But I am going to tell you guys that you need to go out and you need to watch Hot Sauce Tracy Williams versus Kyle O'Reilly. It is not for anything other than who can make the other person tap out harder. And it is basically all the stuff you liked about Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit matches. You get to see that on the independent front by two of the absolute best technical wrestlers working on the independent scene. Do not expect anyone to leave the mat for more than half a second. Just expect people to reverse things in ways you never saw coming. It's an excellent, excellent, excellent high drama match.
Okay, so Evolve 85, Hot Sauce versus Kyle O'Reilly.
You got it.
Okay. So, look, make sure you pull that up. Evolve 85, like I said. I almost watched the Evolve shows this week. I almost went out of my... This is your infectious effect on people, Tom, is I almost went out of my way.
Always love being compared to a virus. Yeah. Thanks, Billy.
You're welcome. I almost went out of my way this weekend to watch the Evolve shows. But then I didn't get into them live, and then Flow Slam wasn't really helpful in getting those matches up in their entirety quickly. So now I just gotta wait. But I'm glad, because now it gives me something fresh to watch for homework. So we're going to Evolve 85, Hot Sauce versus Kyle O'Reilly. Make sure you log it in there. Get your assignment done. Don't procrastinate, boys and girls. And we'll be back to talk about it at length and dissect it next week.
There'll be a lot of dissecting to do. Also, just because now I feel bad for not recommending it, you all need to watch the Keith Lee versus Fred Yehi match. It's right after this match. It's freaking incredible.
Yeah, just get a twofer.
I love those dudes. I love Fred Yehi. Keith Lee is probably my favorite independent wrestler going in the world right now. And Fred Yehi is so fun to watch. But this is another one where it's a David versus Goliath story, but again, both guys, are mostly ground-based wrestlers. Like, it's not like Leo Rush versus Keith Lee, where you got a super high flyer and then a big power guy. You have two people that can do reversals, that can do power moves, that can take power moves. And Fred Yehi is super, super, super technically sound, probably as good, almost as good as Tracy Williams is in terms of that. So literally watch Kyle O'Reilly versus Hot Sauce Tracy Williams, and then the very next match on the card is Fred Yehi versus Keith Lee. And man, you're gonna watch about an hour of just freaking amazing wrestling, y'all.
All right, so there you go, Keith Lee versus Fred Yehi for extra credit. Okay, so get those done, and we'll talk about them at length next week. Make sure you follow him on the Twitter at the Tom Nix. He is our resident guru. He is our homegrown expert.
TheTomNix. That's it.
I can't believe you made a song out of that. All right, Tom Nix, fresh from the U2 concert. Thank you very much, man, for getting into all this wrestling with us, as always, on a weekly basis.
You are very welcome. Wrestling is for everyone. Fuck you, Randy Orton.
A lot to digest this week. No surprise. So unbuckle those pants, maybe unzip the fly a little bit. Give yourself some room to breathe. get everything moving around in there. I know it was a lot this week, and I hope it was tasty. So, look, I want to say thank you to my good friend Brian Truitt for coming on here earlier in the show. Make sure that you check him out at USA Today. Also, make sure you follow him on Twitter at Brian Truitt, and you can check him out on the Mothership podcast as well, which can be found basically everywhere that podcasts can be found, much like this show. Also, my sincere thanks, as always, to Tom Nix. Make sure you follow him on Twitter as well, at the Tom Nix, or the Tom Nix, if you want to put it that way. And look, make sure you do your homework. Tom has signed some serious stuff this week, so make sure you dip into it, get it done early, and prepare yourself for next week's discussion. While you're at it, might as well follow me on Twitter as well, at Infamous Kid. That's Kidd, Infamous Kid, 2 Ds there at the end. Follow me on Twitter for all my random ramblings and musings, my stream of consciousness put into the written word in 140 characters or less. Also, you can make sure you follow the official Twitter handle of this particular show. So that's at the IWC Show, at the IWC Show, to follow Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast wherever it's most convenient for you. We are available everywhere. So iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, SoundCloud, Blueberry, you name it, we're there. Tune in as well. So you name it, wherever it is that you like to get your podcast from, find this podcast there. Just do a search for Intelligent Wrestling Conversation and we'll come up. And once you find that, make sure you subscribe to the show so that you never miss a beat. Every single show gets delivered right to your subscription. On top of that, rate the show. So give us some 5 stars because I think we've earned it. And leave some feedback. There's a section to comment there. Let other people know what it is that you love about the show, why you keep coming back, because that helps us get more people listening. And once we get more people listening, we can do some bigger and better things on the particular show. So, look, my thanks to you. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. I've been your host, Billy Donnelly. This has been Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. I hope that you've gotten plenty of food for thought this week, and we'll be back next week talking plenty of more wrestling. So thanks for listening. I'll see you back here next time. I'm out for now. Peace. Intelligent Wrestling Conversation has been a podcast presentation of This Is Infamous.